Shrink the Nation is a podcast for thoughtful, informed adults, preferably with a pour in hand. The views and opinions expressed on the show are those of the hosts and guests only and do not reflect the views of any employers, institutions, licensing boards, government agencies, bourbon distilleries, or family members, especially our family members. They've asked us to be very clear about that. This show is for informational and entertainment purposes only. Nothing said here should be taken as medical, psychiatric, legal, or professional advice. If you're in crisis, call a professional. If you're mad at something we said, we suggest journaling or emailing us with civility. We're here to challenge ideas, not diagnose strangers. We're clinicians, not your clinicians, and we have the bourbon to prove it. Let's go. All right, welcome back to Shrink the Nation. We're doing our year-end review of 2025. Pretty exciting. But 2025 didn't feel like politics. It felt like a nervous system event. When legitimacy drops, control rises. We got shutdowns as tantrums, loyalty tests as liturgy, and yes, a president wrapping a drone strike as a Christmas present to Christianity. That's not ministry. That's marketing with munitions. Threat brain hates nuance. It grabs handles, strongmen, hard rules, viral certainty. Tonight, we're prying fingers off the remote. We'll decode the tricks and name the defenses and pour some receipts over the vibes. Breathe, take a sip, let's go. I'm David. I got my 20 plus years in the military, board certified psychiatrist. To go with our last couple of weeks, I'm having an interesting IPA, Habali. Actually pretty good. It's got a nice citrusy taste to it. I'm enjoying it.
The only thing better than a nice IPA is a decent bourbon.
Yeah. I couldn't get my hands on a bourbon, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But that was the problem.
I understand, given your location limitations. Hey, it's Rob, 30 years in the military, 26 in psychiatry. Again, coming to you as a full-fledged civilian this evening, exercising my First Amendment rights, just in case somebody wants to try to take them away from me. I'm actually drinking coffee this evening, so nothing fun. Had a busy day. I didn't make it off to the store. I know, I let you down.
You're really letting me down.
Yeah, everyone will probably notice that I'm a touch less humorous, but a little more articulate.
Not slurring your speech. Yeah.
It's a trade-off.
There you
So
go.
today, I believe, marks for you and I also an anniversary of sorts. This is about 6 months since we started doing this thing.
Yeah. This is our 27th full episode.
Mm-hmm.
We're in the 30s if you count our bonus episodes, but
Yep.
I'm not gonna. I'm just gonna call this one 27. But yes,
Yeah.
we've been doing it for
Yeah.
over 6 months.
We started back in some point in June, wanting to make some sense of the world, how things are progressing. It's topics that you and I have talked about for many years, and we decided, hey, who's better suited to wax eloquently to an adoring audience of tens of listeners than you and I? And we couldn't come up with an answer, so we thought, okay, we'll step into the breach, man. And we did. This is a year-end review. If I had to sum up this year in a word, it would be anxiety.
For you or the country or just all of
Well,
us?
a little bit of both, maybe. Yeah, will not go down as a banner year for any of us, I fear, to include myself.
That's why we keep bathing our GABA receptors in
Well,
with
if
good
you
old ethanol.
keep the GABA receptors nicely busy, it does help calm you down. It's a real pain in the ass when it wears off, though. So, at any rate, this year has been interesting because the inclinations of last year have kind of come to fruition. The anxieties which drove an election, the fears, the uncertainties. And again, we've touched on all the reasons for these economic uncertainties, social media related anxieties, and tribalism. We've touched on fears that people have about AI and their personal economic futures. We have seen how the nation has dealt with that, and control is mechanism. That's what we're seeing. So the anxiety has led to certain control mechanisms to manage it in our nation as a whole. For this episode, the thesis is basically uncertainty makes people controlling. 2025 delivered uncertainty in bulk.
More than just uncertainty making people control, you makes them seek out control through whatever means. And when you have leadership saying that they can get in charge of the uncertainty, then
We'll take it.
we will take it. Then you have somebody who's maybe not fully capable of delivering on those promises start to feel their own level of uncertainty.
Absolutely. And that's what we'll see probably into this coming year is that the uncertainty is not going to diminish. There's no factors that are telling us things are getting better. Nobody feels that. Now, are they as bad as maybe we fear? Probably not in the grand scheme of the world. We still live in a relatively peaceful time of great abundance, but there still is some legitimate uncertainties that the American people are experiencing. But there's ways that you can control those uncertainties. But if that doesn't assuage them, which it won't, it's smoke and mirrors. I'll call back to our last episode. It's me waving my left hand so I can slap my brother with my right. Hilarious, never got old. Every time I did it, never got old, nor did he ever catch on. Not casting any dispersions to his intellect. He's a smart guy. Never caught on to that one, though. But as those things fail to resolve the anxieties that we have, we will start to cast it upward. We will see that anxiety being held kind of at a pinnacle. And it's going to be an interesting year, I think.
Yeah, I think we look forward into the future. I agree. It is going to be interesting, especially as we start to look to the things we were talking about last week with the way that things are starting to fall apart for this administration, the signs that we're starting to see. It does look like the desire to gain control is rising so much to kind of assuage their anxiety that there are going to be repercussions from that. That'll be really interesting to watch, I think, on both sides.
Interesting or freaking terrifying. I don't know. We'll see. I would rather frame it as interesting because I can sit with interesting. Terrifying is a whole different animal. I am a little fearful of the latter versus the former, but I'll keep calling it interesting right up until I break.
Well, I think framing it from the perspective of looking at each side and how they're reacting, it is really interesting, weirdly predictable as the wheels start to fall off. And you have somebody who's trying to keep them on. The different ways that he goes about trying to keep them on is entertaining, but watching what we will eventually see, I think, on both sides. I mean, you have one side who's just terrified of it from the beginning. If I'm looking at the left, it doesn't matter what happens. They're going to be unhappy. That's not really up for grabs.
I am interested in how the left's going to handle this because they can lean into the anxiety, they can stoke it, or they can be the voice that helps calm. I fear I know the answer to which direction they're going to go.
No, I think we all know the answer. I think they want to spark as much chaos as possible.
Yeah.
They'll absolutely lean into the anxiety. They could try to calm it, but they don't see themselves as wanting to help the wheels stay on. As you're watching things fall apart, there's a lack of foresight into, well, we're all on this ride. So if we're the ones over there trying to knock the wheels off as they're coming off,
Yeah.
you're on the ride too. It's probably not going to go well.
It's yeah. We're all on the roller coaster together, which reminds me some years ago, I was in Vegas with a buddy and he knows I hate roller coasters. This is many years ago. And he kept giving me shit about riding the roller coaster at the New York. And I knew he was going to do this. So my tactic in dealing with it was to be like, yep, let's do it. Let's get it done. Let's do it right now. I just wanted to get it out of the way. I didn't want to mess with it. I mean, I hate them, but it's just a ride, 60 seconds of my life, whatever. So we're clicking our way up to the first big drop and he's just like nervous talking. When I get anxious, I go quiet and I'm like, are you scared? And he said, I hate roller coasters. I didn't think you'd do that. And I just wanted to give you a shit about it. So in that vein, I kind of expect the left to do something very similar in which they'll stoke the anxieties. My hope is, though, that there are some leaders that pop out of the left that make it their mission, the way they are pursuing this, to be leaders and to actually assuage anxiety and to be the calm voice, give a vision for the nation or for the people, rather than vote against the anxiety, vote for the sanity, vote for the plan, vote for the policy. And we have certainly been sorely lacking. And we are heading into a midterm year. It'll be a big year for that. After the midterms, before the end of this next calendar year, I fully expect we're going to be in presidential election season again.
It isn't just the left. I think those on the right as well. One of my pet peeves is when people refer to the Republican Party now as being conservative. They're not. They're not conservative anymore. I mean, they used to be, but they're not conservative. But at the same time, to really suggest that only the left has the ability to help calm this down. It's not right. There are people on the right who still exist in that Reagan, Republican, conservative viewpoint who have started to try to calm things down.
Mhm.
But while they do that, then they get attacked. And there are a few who are willing to sacrifice. Right now, the left doesn't have a lot of power. And so I think when you lack power, when you lack that ability to be able to truly calm, because that's probably their biggest issue right now, they don't have a lot of control. And so the only thing they can do is try to shake the wheels off faster to make it fall apart. Is that a good thing? No. We saw that during the shutdown. That's kind of the play that they have, is to try to go along and make things worse in hopes that everything stops.
You make a good point, and I fully fell into the dichotomy model there. There's a right and a left. Neither one of them are monolithic by any means. So, yes, on each side, there are individuals that can step up. I just read an article actually about the 8 Republicans that opposed Trump this past year. And, as it turns out, none of them actually suffered terrible consequences from their opposition because they had enough authority and enough gravitas and position in their elected districts, a group of senators and some senior representatives. So we will see this, that there will be some people on the right that maybe step up and try to assuage anxiety. And you're right, when you have no power, you're relegated to throwing shit. So we will see a lot of that. The alpha male takes authority, the rest of them just throw monkey shit. So there we go.
As you said, that nothing terrible happened to the few people who actually managed to stand against the administration. That's going to be reflected in what we're going to talk about anyway, which was the trust crash. Recent poll showing that only 17% of Americans say they trust the federal government to do what's right, just about always or most of the time. At this point, if you have people who are now standing against that, once it gets to a certain level of distrust, if you're seen as part of that, they're probably hedging their bets and saying, well, we can go with the 17% or we can go with the 83%. And it sounds like they're starting to swing the other direction.
And that was a Pew Research Center study, and that, as it turns out, marks the lowest trust in government in the history of them tracking that particular number, which goes back Eisenhower, I think. They've been tracking it since the 50s. And trust in the government certainly has waxed and waned, and there have been periods where it has been low, low as in right around 20%, notably around the Nixon era. But in general, it lives much higher than 17%, and 17 is the lowest. That's part of this. In medicine, when we talk about illnesses, we talk about their etiology. What causes this illness? What are the factors that lead to the illness? Part of the etiology of this anxiety at this time, the factors that are leading to anxiety or causing anxiety, causing angst and uncertainty, coupled with this incredibly low trust in the government to be able to solve these problems.
If the only other time that we've seen numbers this low were around the time of Nixon, rules, the guidelines kind of changed significantly around that time. And I think now we're kind of seeing a lot of that being undone. And so is that what we're projecting next then? I mean, if we do look forward a couple of years with trust being this low, do we see a complete change in rules to guide the government federally?
I mean, we can hope. Made comment about this in the past is this administration has demonstrated for me that much of what I thought were the guardrails or the rules of how we function. Turns out they were just handshakes, agreements, tradition, and not necessarily hard rules. If you're shameless, and we've certainly talked about shameless quite a lot, if you're shameless, they hold no sway. So, yeah, it would be nice to see some things enshrined in law and make these not just guidelines, but guardrails would be a nice outcome. We'll see. Now, if we go back to the Nixon era, I mean, there were multiple factors. There was certainly Watergate, which made people question trustworthiness of the government. But it was also after, a decade of Vietnam. So there were other factors that were contributing to the low trust. It's not as low as it is now, even then, but it was close. It was right around 20%.
Well, I guess just looking at it,
That's a rough IPA, folks. That one took a sip. I thought it was going to knock the wind out of him.
yeah, you either have to rebuild the trust through changing all of the obvious flaws that we have in the government right now, or the government fails. I mean, if the people completely don't trust it, then what happens? So I just want to err on the direction of we survive as a country, which means that all of the rules that are currently being broken get shored up in some way to bring us back to my Navy days.
There's a massive joke there. I'm too erudite to call it out.
Fair enough. All right. If you have a hole in the side of the ship, you just start filling it with whatever the fuck you can. I mean, that's essentially
Mhm.
that's the protocol. If you can't patch it with the standard patch,
Patch it with a
stick
semen.
whatever you can.
I didn't mean it the way it came out,
Erudite.
folks. I didn't mean it. I was thinking of a junior seaman, a junior enlisted personnel. In the Army, I would have said private, patch it with a private, you know.
Which is almost as bad.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, it's just anyway.
Nicely done. For our tens of listeners who we are currently cranking up their anxiety, that's a good analogy. We're all on a ship. We need this ship to continue on. It's a magical thinking, and we've talked about that, the idea of the national divorce and some of the craziness that has been proposed as a simple solution to really complex problems. But we need this ship to continue on. We need it to stay seaworthy. And because of that, I do believe in my heart that we'll figure it out. We'll make it work because we have to. Now, do we take a huge hit? Do we lose international prestige? Do we lose some of our GDP? High probability. But do we figure out a way? And I think ultimately we will. But the other factor here in terms of this trust issue is something else that we talked a great deal about when it was occurring was the government shutdown that we saw in a very demonstrable way that the parents are not home. They're not adulting in an appropriate way. They checked out on us and failed to do the one thing that I believe they're constitutionally bound to do, which is pass a budget. And they didn't. And then they let us all just kind of flap in the wind for 43 days while they fought back and forth to prove which one of them was the good parent.
There's a point in a lot of people's lives, I'd say, where anybody who's suffering that kind of abuse, at what point do they get tired of both parents? At what point do they realize these are just shitty parents?
Yeah.
But maybe there's something good to that. Even when we do therapy with somebody. By the way, I love the holidays in therapy. Nothing helps you push forward in therapy quite like the holidays, having somebody spend time with their family to bring out all the trauma from the past. It's such a wonderful time to make huge gains in therapy. And
Absolutely.
this is just like that.
And that's when I hit them with a ham.
We had the shutdown. We have the two parents who were just waiting to see who they can blame, who can be blamed for this, to the point where they both are, and neither one of them really wins. But, we, the children, finally get to take a real look at our parents for what they are, and we're kind of grossed out. They're all kind of shitty. Then we could say, well, we don't like this. We have to make a change. And it's a powerful thing to see the reality. I mean, otherwise, when you idolize both of them or one of them, you fail to see their flaws. Well, they showed you their flaws beautifully.
Yeah, in a way, we couldn't ignore either side. It was very difficult to idolize either side. It took a lot of emotional work to not see the faults of both sides. The other factors that come in, it's the ever increasing polarization. That interesting research came out looking actually 214 forward. And 214 was kind of a watershed moment in our history in which more people had smartphones than didn't have smartphones. But basically, the study looked 214 forward and tied social media activity with polarization and drew a direct correlation in a pretty striking fashion that the more engaged you are with social media, the more likely you are to be heavily polarized in your politics. So between polarization, between the government demonstrating its inadequacies through a shutdown that lasted 43 days, by far the longest in history, by 8 days, the longest in history, and just kind of a general sense that we really can't trust reality anymore. So after me preaching and preaching and preaching for everyone to get off social media for various reasons that were actually legit, I promise I wasn't just hopping back on Facebook because I wanted to doom scroll. I had to get back on Facebook, and it's a whole different animal than what I recall it being the last time I was even remotely engaged with Facebook, which would have been 2009, 2010. But there's all these reels, what they call them, but these little videos. And I have been taken aback by the fact that a solid 95% of those reels are completely AI generated and not labeled as such. It's these crazy things that cannot be real, but they look very real. They look legitimate. I don't know what it says about me, but it seems like all the ones that pop up for me are these crazy monstrous creatures, and they're presented as if these are real creatures that are existing out there. There's no header. There's nothing warning you that this is AI generated. You just have to kind of know if it's utterly ridiculous. You got to know. But this year is the first year that I've ever experienced something where I look at it, I'm like, oh my gosh. And then I realize that that can't be real. But then I'm left with this kind of weird question as to, well, was it? I don't think it was, but it could be. So our shared sense of reality, which has always been a problem for me ever since we went to 24-hour news cycles and 24-hour news agencies. Historically, when I was a kid, we had 3 channels and we had the evening news. That's where you got news, and you had a local paper, and maybe if you were like super high speed, you might get, major paper. But we had a shared data set. We knew what real was. This is the real news, and we just don't have that. So when you take reality fragmentation plus the government demonstration of ineptitude, a general sense that we're in our grievance era of politics, there's a sense that institutions serve very narrow interests, that it's not surprising to me that trust has plummeted the way it has. So I guess, long story short, when the system feels unreliable, whether it is or not, if it feels unreliable, the brain searches for certainty. It's not searching for nuance. Nuance is something you have when you're stable and reasonably calm. That's when you can look at nuance. So again, some of the policies, some of the actions that our politicians are taking, some of the things that the American people are kind of behind right now are decidedly non-nuanced, because this is just not an era where nuance can be tolerated.
When you say the actions that our politicians are taking, I mean, if anything, I'd say it's like the inaction of so many on both sides, too. It is kind of interesting when you look at the way that Congress is functioning right now. You have one side that has all the control and yet does nothing. And then you have the other side that doesn't have control, doesn't have power, but they're wearing it almost as a badge of honor. Like, it's not our fault. Where you see distrust really coming up, at least from that perspective, is that people are starting to say, well, so what? You're still not trying to do anything. It's like sitting back and saying, yeah, I probably can't help that person who's just gotten in a car wreck. Yeah, you might not be able to do much, but you can do something. And I think that's where a lot of that 17% comes from, is where people are just starting to get really tired of a lack of anything, especially coming from our legislative branch. And going back to Bowen's family systems theory, the triangulation that's occurring, where if I just make it your fault, then you won't blame me. Even if I had the ability to at least try to do something, made no effort. Like, yeah, I might get slapped down, but if I just sit back and say, well, I feel powerless, even though you have some power. It's why people are starting to get annoyed with all sides.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, the weak link in the government at this time is the legislative branch. And we've talked about this at length, actually. And, when you think of all the factors, it is fascinating how many Republicans are electing to not run again for this upcoming cycle. And they're already announcing that they're not going to run again. And they're heading back to their states, many of them, to run for governorships, et cetera, state level office. Again, from an anxiety reflection standpoint, so much of the anxieties are getting pushed into their realm, and they're not able to handle it. We've gotten to a point where they're not doing their job any longer. And all the mechanisms that used to allow them to do their jobs have changed so dramatically that, and the scrutiny that they are under at any given time is so much higher. And in order to get reelected, they have to be TikTok stars on top of everything else. It's the chink in the armor, the failings. We're seeing them heightened in that branch because of the nature of their election cycle, the difference in their power and the difference in the number of people that support them. We're seeing it stress test there, and it is breaking.
What starts to get really frustrating is you're seeing this group who is very much more focused on their own survival than that of the system. And so even as this system is changing, where you do have to be a TikTok star, you do need to be able to kind of get your name out there. The fear that they have is that they will be ousted if they choose to even do the things that would have been done in the past, where forming coalitions to make changes. What's driving that fear to get together, to make more alliances, to create your own power? we're living in this world now where if you just repeat something over and over enough, people will believe that as truth, which has been absolutely taken advantage of to make things run the way they are currently. And so, why is that not being done to stop it as well? And it seems like there are a few people who are taking advantage of that, but not using some of the older tactics to do that. So, reaching across the aisle, making those alliances. You have only a handful of Republicans who are fighting back, but you don't really need that many. You only need like four to turn things over, right? Like that's all you needed was to get four to caucus with you to regain control. It's the self-survival, I suppose, that's preventing them from doing that as well. I guess that's what I find is frustrating is that they already know that they're going to get primaried just by not going along 100%.
Yeah.
So what is it that's stopping them from going further? You've already crossed a line that you can't go
Death
back from.
threats.
Yeah.
There's that pressure, getting primaried pressure. And then there's the pressure of having your name repetitively said by the loudest voice in the United States and the certain fringe element that hangs on said words. You know, even Marjorie Taylor Greene, she has made it very clear that since she's been on the outs since the big breakup, and breakups are hard, she and her family have had threats. So there's multiple forces. But this is a good transition point.
Hey, it's Rob from Shrink the Nation. As my friend David so eloquently states at the beginning of the show, we are clinicians, but we're not your clinician. We love to joke around and dive into the tough topics, but there's something really important we need to say. If you're struggling with your mental health or facing substance use issues, we want you to know you're not alone. We have dedicated our professional careers to mental health, and we care deeply about it. It's okay to ask for help. Reaching out to a professional in your area could be the first step toward feeling better. Don't wait. There's support out there, and it works. Please take that first step. We want you to be well. Now let's get back to the show. Oh, and don't tell David I said he was eloquent. He'll be insufferable.
We established the evidence for anxiety and for distrust in the government. So, how does that end up becoming control? In briefest terms, when people feel low control, they compensate by clinging to systems that promise control. So, we're talking order, authority, and certainty. So, one of the things, and we certainly have seen this, is that people will, instead of shrink the nation, which I think everyone should do, and you should tell your
Hmm.
friends, and you should upvote us or like us or whatever you do
Put a smile.
on your social media platforms. Tell your friends, tell your grandmothers. I think would really do well with the grandmother crowd personally. Much beloved. I think David and I both would
The
be.
Nonas
But
love us.
they shrink the world, take complexity and shred out all nuance, collapse it down into slogans and villains. And there we sit, a very shrunken down world that lacks nuance, but is filled with villains and filled with slogans.
Guess what I found surprising was the chaos that we've been seeing over the last year and a half. It felt very much manufactured to create an avenue to allow slogans, allow a lack of nuance to break through. That's where this all gets really, really interesting if you go backwards, which really surprised people during the election, especially, was all of the markers for the leading party to retain control were there. The economy was doing quite well. The stock market was up. All these things were happening. And yet it still flipped. And that, I think, had more to do with what we're looking at as far as social media, the echo chambers that we're building, the polarization of people was that they kept hearing how chaotic things were, how the anxiety was being developed as this idea of how terrible things were. In fact, the slogan "Make America Great Again."
Yeah, that one always kills me. Make America great again. The building questions are when were we great and when did we cease to be great? And no one's ever able to tell me that. I don't know. Well, I mean, were we great in the 50s? 1945 is the last time we were great, people.
Well, and I think that that's what's really interesting about that, though, is that the slogan "Make America Great Again" implies that it's not, or that it was, and then it ceased to be great. But by all economic factors, it was doing just fine. In fact, it was doing better than it had before that. And yet, when you come in with a complete lack of nuance and you say, I'm going to make all these things better, and you pinpoint very specific items and say, look, it's terrible. In all the rhetoric, you jump over the step of, wait a minute, what was wrong? But what's really interesting now is that now all that stuff actually is kind of going in the wrong direction. And yet again, we're being told something completely different. It's a superpower.
We've touched on this. One of the enemies to stability tends to be success. So, when a nation is successful, when they have the world's leading GDP, an economy that the rest of the world looks at and envy, when it has a military that is legitimately the most powerful military force that has ever existed on Earth in history, it leaves a lot of room to worry about immigrants or cultural issues, all the things that end up becoming the hinge points that led to this particular election and transition of power.
Yeah. It doesn't make me feel better.
No, 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 it doesn't, but it is a cycle. I mean, it's a cycle. There's books written about this, that the hard men from the desert tend to be the ones that take power and eventually become soft, so that the hard men from the desert come and take power from them. Power ends up creating luxury, and luxury ends up being actually the enemy of success. So I guess an argument could be made that there we sit, we're a victim of our own success. However, in heading back to these mechanisms, you can shrink the world down, or you can find a way to get your arms around it. So the other thing that we're seeing is the adoption of a strong man. I alone can fix this. Personally, anytime in my life that I've had someone tell me I alone can fix this, I immediately put my hand over my wallet, because they're usually trying to screw me over in a big way. No, you alone, you and about, how many ever other people. But strong men, hard rules, and purity testing. So it's a way to get yourself around this complexity, is that you simplify it down to this one dude can fix it, this one party, and this is how we define what our party is. This is how we define our in group. And you narrow it down and narrow it down and narrow it down. And we certainly have seen that in this past several years. We're focused on the year of our Lord 2025 at this juncture. It is a phenomena that unfortunately does not actually help clarify things. It does not result in solutions. It just simplifies things. And simple is very rarely the best answer.
At large, simple can be the best answer when things are simple.
When things are simple.
When you're talking about a nation the size of ours,
Yeah.
a lack of caveat becomes problematic.
Well,
I completely agree.
just the immigration thing. It's been simplified down to bad hombres coming across the border. Really, anyone who looks for nuance can see the complexity of it, and how immigration, and even illegal immigration, is a big driving force in our economy. It provides the workforce. They're not coming and stealing Americans' jobs. They're stealing the jobs no one wants to do. And when no one's available to do those jobs, prices go up. There's the nuance. And, I
Yeah.
realize they're here illegally. By definition, illegal means illegal. So it's difficult to err on the side of illegal, but it is an incredibly nuanced topic. We've whittled it down to a very simplistic approach, to the point where it's actually even freaking people out. That when you're deporting people from like Northern Europe in aggressive ways, people are like, whoa, maybe we've gone too far. And my sit route all of a sudden got really expensive. Why? What happened there? When you simplify things down, there's downstream consequences, and we start to see actually the nuance.
It's kind of surprising, more so, that the simplicity stayed when you're talking about these types of things. You said this last week. You said this is a job that exists on nuance. They
Yeah.
wake up, there's nuance, there's lunch, there's nuance. But that's what's so surprising, I guess, would be the missteps of an administration that gains power by simplifying things, but then fails completely to get into the nuance and actually use the nuance. Maybe it's just part of our attention economy where people don't want to hear the nuance, but they definitely expect it. They get really upset when the family down the street who's been living there for the last 20 years and has been nothing but a friendly member of the community and has done nothing wrong, all of a sudden,
Ice kicks in their door.
yeah. And they're like, but wait a minute. That's not what I meant. Well, it's too simple. The thing I'm surprised by is how easy of a win it would be for this administration to just go with the nuance.
Mhm.
You have power through simplicity, but you understand.
Reel it back at this point.
Yeah,
Yeah.
really, really easy to say, okay, but in these certain situations, but that's what you get. I think that's what you get when you run on simplicity, but you're unwilling to change.
Well, and the story this year was interesting because they came in with basically a set of plans. They were simplistic. They were very straightforward. They were sledgehammers. And they came in and instituted those plans in just rapid fire succession. And I think everyone can remember January, February, even into March, that sense of frenetic energy. And I remember thinking, I don't think I can survive 4 years of this. But the other thought that I had is they also can't either. They can't sustain it. So they came in with simple. They used up all their simple. And there's the problem. They had a bucket load of simple. That simple now has been used up. They've ladled it out, slapped it around, and now we're in that zone where everything is nuanced and complex, and they're not doing the best job managing that, nor do I think they're structured well to manage that. They're looking for simple. We'll see. We've got 3 more years.
Yeah, we have 3 more years, but the cracks are already showing. That's where I think things get scary is in these attempts now to manage the anxieties and to kind of regain control in a system that is completely falling apart. And when you run around with a 17% trust rating, you start to try to do things to regain that trust. The issue here being not necessarily the right things. If you're doing the things that got you to distrust, you're just doubling down on them now. I don't know that it's going to work. I just don't.
I don't expect it to. I mean, fundamentally for Americans, like I said a few seconds ago, that when things are stable, there's a lot of room to worry about non-essentials. But ultimately, most people right now, their anxiety is not on macro charts. It's not looking at the Pew Research Foundation results. Their anxiety is very palpable and very demonstrable. It's a grocery store receipt. And you can't escape that kind of anxiety. It's a weekly endeavor. That's an every evening of your life. You've got to figure out what you're going to feed your family. And as those things don't dissipate, the people are going to focus in on what actually affects them every day, every single day. And that anxiety is going to get transmitted upward. And once we've proven that strong men don't do the job, once we've proven that tribal loyalty doesn't do the job, purity tests aren't doing the job, we're going to, I think, find things start to break open a little bit. And people's tribal loyalty is going to waver, and their belief in a strong man's going to waver. And we'll see. This upcoming year should demonstrate some of that. I think 2027, 2028 will be more interesting. And hopefully, we're still doing the show then, if we can turn our tens of listeners into 20s of listeners or 30s of listeners.
I think though what you're pointing out is maybe something that wasn't anticipated in that you can win an election, you can gain power through this attention economy. People can exist in echo chambers online until it affects their real world. That's the tipping point where you can tell somebody all day, every day that things are really, really terrible and only I can fix them. And because they're not experiencing it to the degree, it's easy to complain, right? It's very easy to say, everything could be better and I can fix it. It's a lot harder to tell somebody that everything is now great when things are actually getting worse for them. You see this in therapy, right? You'll see this with somebody who you're working with. They get to that tipping point where they finally look around and say, my reality is not matching up with what I think, or at least what I've been telling myself for all of these years. And I think the shutdown was that first real thing. Nobody thinks the federal government does anything for you until it's not doing anything for you. Then all of a sudden, you start to get inconvenience and you realize, shit, these people that were just in my feed or whatever, they actually matter in what they're doing or not doing. And the reality starts to hit. Maybe I'm hopeful. Maybe this is me being hopeful in this, in that we have AI that can convince you to vote a certain way. We have these echo chambers that we're building for ourselves But what an echo chamber can't do is put money in your bank that doesn't exist.
Yeah.
It can't actually lower the price of anything on its own. That takes actual leadership. That takes actual work. Interestingly, I think, is that it's a lot easier to crash something than it is to fix it. It's easier to introduce entropy into a system with one person than it is to introduce enthalpy. And that's what we're seeing.
Well, you said it last week, actually, the wrecking ball analogy, which I'm going to give you props for because your other analogies have been incredibly lacking and embarrassing to me and everyone who has a brain. But that one was good. That one was a good one.
But it's true. I'm hopeful for this. Maybe there will be a swing. We've seen on the horizon everything breaking or getting worse because of these systems, because of AI, because of all these echo chambers. Even with a patient, some people have to hit rock bottom before they wake up and realize how bad the situation is. And as much as we might want to sit there and yell at them and say, do you not see how bad this is? You don't do that because they have to see it for themselves.
David, are you saying the Patriot games are not going to solve this? I was
Actually,
pretty
I think the
certain.
Patriot games will make it all better. No,
I'm moderately confident that the Patriot games solve it all. I don't know when they're scheduled to occur. I still don't know what athletics is, but
I think the Super Bowl needs to look out right now. The NFL's got themselves real competition now.
maybe. So, you know what I think we should do? Some prescriptions for the upcoming year. We can do that.
We can do prescriptions for the coming year.
All right. So here's my encouragement to everyone. So I've talked about social media many, many times, and I'm going to reiterate my greatest prescription for the United States of America is get the hell off social media, people, except for ours, and make sure you like us and subscribe. Voters must stop outsourcing their nervous system to political celebrities. A leader is not your therapist, your dad, or your revenge fantasy. If your blood pressure depends on a politician, congratulations, you're being successfully governed.
So I've got one. If you're going to stay on social media, like real things, just like 3 real things. Just go ahead and look at the weather. Look at boring things like bird cams, city council minutes. Just like something that isn't just meant to get your blood pressure spiked.
Yeah. Well, and in that vein, I have another prescription. Media must stop selling arousal as insight. You don't have breaking news, you have a business model. And if your product is panic, don't act shocked when customers become unstable. We get fed panic, panic, panic. Well, of course, then what do? Eventually, we panic. And I get it. It's their business model. It's the business model that's developed from a 24-hour news cycle and trying to figure out some way to get people to stay tuned in 24/7, but it is not helping our democracy.
If you're scrolling through news articles and you see something that is really, really fantastic and you feel like I just got to click on this, don't click on it. Ignore it because more than likely it's not what it says it is. It's not real and it's complete bullshit. If you don't believe me, I want you to think back to 2 days ago or the last time that you were scrolling through and clicking on something that was fantastic. What was it? Do you remember? My guess is you probably clicked on it and you were like, oh, that was a really misleading title and it had nothing to do with, or it was ridiculous or not real.
Yeah. Reminds me of when I used to smoke. So I was a smoker in my younger days, and for some reason it finally clicked with me that the next cigarette was the most important thing in my world, whereas the last one, I couldn't remember when I smoked it. Absolutely. Most people who click these things, they can't tell you what they actually had clicked or what was so important about it or what really captured their attention about it. So ultimately, folks, here's my final thought for 2026, and then I'm going to go back to being a non-podcasting dad. In 2026, we have to work on rebuilding trust, or we keep white knuckling this and pretending that the skid is freedom. There's a better way, and our tens of listeners have to lead the way on this one because you're in a unique group drawn to a very niche podcast. We really have to dial the panic down and make nuanced decisions.
Absolutely. I'll give you my final takes on 2025 because this is the year in review. It was fucked and predictable.
Talk about nuanced, people, right there.
Well, that's what it was. If anything, I'm kind of surprised that it took this long for the wheels to come off, but at the same time, I'm surprised that they are coming off as quickly.
Mm-hmm.
Again, nuance. It's a weird year. Here's to 2026.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Empty
Imagine it'll
coffee
get
cup here, but
a little bit worse before it gets better.
it's always darkest before dawn.
For anybody who's really worried about it, this is kind of exactly what to expect. I think we can look forward to hitting rock bottom and then rebuilding back up into something stronger and better, hopefully with more guardrails in place
I
to
hope.
not have this shit happen again.
Yep. I believe the 2030s are going to be a wonderful time.
Looking forward to the 2030s.
I do. I believe it.
I think we will learn a lot. You drop a boat in the water and it starts springing some leaks. Well, you fix the leaks and you keep on sailing. That's what I'm going to leave it with.
Spoken like a Navy man.
All right. Well, thank you to anybody who listened to all of it. Great. Thank you for listening to all of our episodes. We'll be back in the new year. Thank you so much. Hit subscribe, like us, and we appreciate you. You have no idea. That's it. Cue up that music. We are out.